Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, multi-award-winning author, and man who finally got a haircut, Chad Robert Morgan. And let's get right into it. Just a little FYI, we got some construction going on in the house, so hopefully we'll keep the background noise to a minimum. I was trying to record this yesterday, and then there was somebody was so killed it. So hopefully with today's technology and noise dampening software and all that kind of stuff, hopefully the construction noise will be kept to a minimum and we'll be all good. So with that, I wanted to start by talking about CreepIE. So CreepIE is going to be, as I've plugged a few times, it's going to be here at the end of January. So we already had Robert Englund, we already had Bruce Campbell, and we already had Cassandra Peterson, three major stars in the horror industry, in the horror franchises. Now they've added Kiefer Sutherland to the mix. So that's four huge A-listers there for CreepIE. So this is going to be huge. It's going to be off the hook. Like to let you guys know that my first review for my newest horror book, Fear, is in. I sent it to Audiobook Reviewer and they loved it, which is it's really great to hear when you get the email telling you that they reviewed it, and like one of the first words is like, wow. So I will say that my horror books are received pretty well at Audiobook Reviewer. So I was a little nervous about Fear. I didn't feel like Fear really hit the mark too well. Not because it was a bad book, but because there's a book I wanted to write and there's the book I did write, and they're kind of pretty far apart. So I was very self-conscious about what I had done. But Audiobook Reviewer just, they're like, dude, we this is the third in your the third book, horror book you've sent me, and I've loved every single one of them. This is just as fantastic. Now, I will say that Audiobook Reviewer doesn't like every book I send them. I have sent them Intergalactic Space Force: The Cherub Threat, and while I got a decent review, I got like 4 out of 5 stars, not winning any awards off of that, right? So my sci-fi comedy doesn't land as well with the people over at Audiobook Reviewer that my horror does. And that's kind of a mixed blessing, because on the one hand, I would love to have more awards and more accolades. I mean, you get to put it on the book cover. It helps to sell books when you say, hey, this is a 2-time award winner right here, right? On the other hand, it is comforting to know that it's not just a 5-star stamp review, right? That they are actually reviewing the books. They are saying, yeah, I just didn't like this one. It wasn't good. Or it wasn't as good as something else, kind of thing. It proves that there's some legitimacy to their process. Admittedly, my horror has been very well received over Audiobook Reviewer. I was really nervous about Fear, and I just feel like Audiobook Reviewer for me for a horror book is usually a good first review, because if I don't land a good review at Audiobook Reviewer for a horror book, I've really fucked up. But not only did I not fuck up, based on the response I got, I think they actually received it a lot better than they did my first installment of Short Bites. Because Short Bites did get Audiobook Reviewer's Choice Award and then get Book of the Year for horror. So, but you know, when I did the Baby Eater, I got an email going, "Oh my God, this blew me away!" Right? And then when I got the email from Fear, it's like, "Wow!" And then for Short Bites, I was like, "Oh yeah, this was really good. 5 stars, good job." And I'm like, "Okay." That was a little underwhelming, but okay. But I mean, it's still managed to win Book of the Year. So I would say, yeah, this is a good sign that in spite of my self doubt, that I've actually hit it out of the park with Fear, um, or maybe at least maybe not hit it out of the park, but definitely got on base with it. So um, do want to talk a little bit about uh, the books that review here on the podcast. I've mentioned before that the point of the podcast is to expose as many different indie authors as possible. We do a lot of sci-fi and horror on the show, primarily because that's what I like. And when I'm at WonderCon or I'm at these horror conventions, especially when I'm at these horror conventions, got to go to a lot of horror conventions because that's where my books sell well, and I meet fellow horror writers. So I don't want it to be, books Chad likes. I want it to be, a large swath of indie authors. So I do read books that are not my favorite genre, and I do try to critique them honestly, and objectively. One of the examples would be Jennifer Milne's book, which is a very good book. It's actually received several awards on its. Um, Try that again. One example of this would be Jennifer Milne's book, which has won several awards on her own right. I believe, like one of them was Mom's books or something like that. A lot of more family friendly book reviews. And it was a good, strong book. Now, again, it was about a little girl who's a princess who was supposed to get magical powers and didn't. And not really the kind of book I want. I'm more of like playground, you know, little kids getting chopped up in saw traps. She's writing about magical kittens and summer camp. So good book. And again, I'm not saying that to slam the book. I'm just simply saying not my flavor. Um, and so it was amongst the stack of my growing stack of autographed indie titles. Which, by the way, Jennifer, you didn't autograph that one. That, mm. um, but I felt like it was deserving of a better home. Somebody who would appreciate it more than I would, since again, I don't think she wrote it for a 50-year-old man um, with a horror kink. Um, so I handed it off to what I think is more of her target audience, which is my nephew's stepdaughter, who is about 9. So hopefully Addie will appreciate it way more than I did. Um, and again, I did enjoy the book. So if somebody who it wasn't written for enjoyed it, hopefully somebody who it was written for will enjoy it that much more. So here's hoping that Addie will enjoy it at least as much as I have. With that said, I do get a lot of emails from, well, I shouldn't say a lot of emails. I get occasional emails from authors who are like, hey, I would love to get my book reviewed. How can I get it to you? Best way is to contact me either through our online store. I actually get a lot of emails through our online store at shopspectralinc.com. You can also email me directly at ias@spectralinc.productions.com. That's IAS as an indie author showcase at Spectral Inc. Productions. That's Spectral as in ghost, ink as what you draw with, and productions.com. And send it to me. The best thing would be either your book as a PDF or a promo code for Audible is actually even better, because I will go through audiobooks like crazy. I do a lot of driving these days. Whatever is the most cost effective for the author. Because again, we're all indie, we're all on a budget, we're all just trying to scrape things together, and none of us has really got money to, send copies across the globe kind of thing. So, yeah, a PDF is fine. I had one author that did send me a PDF. I did start reading it. Um, I had issues with it really early on, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do this. So, um, but I did give it a shot. I did give it an honest try. I've had a couple people send me audiobook promo codes. Those are fantastic. Doesn't cost you anything. In fact, I think it counts as a sale. I think you get money off of that if I remember right. Unless Amazon has changed the rules again. You never know with them. So, uh, but yeah, PDF, um, Audible promo code. Best way to get me your book because it costs you nothing. I get to read it or listen to it, and then if we like it, it's on the podcast. Because again, we do not bring books onto the podcast that we do not like. We're not going to sit there and say, so here's the book from Joe Schmo, and this sucked. Even a bad book is written by somebody who's trying their damn best, and I don't want to kick anybody when they're down. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like if it wasn't a good book, I don't want to shit on them. That's not the point of the podcast. The point is to lift people up, not drag anybody down. First of all, um, second of all, there is a realist. Well, second of all, it's subjective, right? Like I may not have liked it. I may have had issues with the book, but that doesn't mean that somebody else won't enjoy it. I mean, maybe the fault is in the reviewer and not in the material being reviewed. I don't know. It's not like I've gone to years of English classes to master the art of the prose, and says a person who claims he's won 6 awards. I have won 6 awards, honest. They're small awards, but I still won them. Anyway, the third reason, and this is a little thing, but as an indie author myself, there's also always the fear of uh, retaliatory reviews, right? Like if you sit there and say, "Oh, this book sucked, 1 star," they can turn around and say, "Oh yeah, Chad Robert Morgan's book Fury, yeah, 1 star that motherfucker." I mean, that does happen. I mean, as an Uber driver, I've had that happen to me a couple times where I've had a fare that was just, oh, this person, and I'm always like just 5 star, move on, right? Uber requires that I review the fare. They won't let. I've tried to pass by it, and it's like I don't want to. It's like nope, gotta. So unless the person is like belligerent or throwing up in my car, uh, or something, I just 5 star, move on, and you just sit in the back of the seat, not say a damn word. 5 star, um, the one of the few times when I've like, this person, I had an issue, 4 stars. Next thing you know, I got a 1 2 star review on my thing, and I'm like, somebody is getting revenge for me giving an honest feedback. So, as somebody who's trying to build up his audiobook career here, I don't want to risk somebody sending me a nasty review just out of spite. Even if it wasn't out of spite, maybe they're just kind of colored by the review, and so like, well, he thinks this is good. My book, he did this passage, I did that passage better, that kind of thing. And then, so I just don't need that in my life right now. I got enough crap going on. So those are the 3 reasons. Main reason, I don't want to bring anybody down, because even a bad book is done with a lot of earnest effort. I do feel like I may not be the most qualified person to do a full review. That's why we call it a showcase, not a review. And 3, there's legitimate fear of retaliation and getting review bombed. So that's why if I don't like it, it's just not going to be on the show. I'm not going to say anything negative about a book. If I'm saying anything negative about a book, it's because this is a really good book. This is just sort of like the one few nitpicks that I have, kind of thing. that brings us to this week's showcase, Them That Are Called by J.G. Parker. And as you can see, this was a tome. It even says right there, an epic. He's not kidding. This took forever. The audiobook was 24 hours. Not quite The Stand or the Bible, but we are definitely getting into George R.R. Martin territory with this thing. I do want to say that I think he's mimicking a certain style. I mean, he's calling it out on the cover, an epic, right? So there were like huge battles that he writes in detail. And like there's one part where this gal is doing her right and she's climbing up a mountain, and it's going into details about how the hands are bleeding and how stressful she is. So the guy can write. There's no question about that. And that chapter is about her going on a right. And that right is basically she needs to basically find and kill a demon, talk to the herald to get her magic weapons to go fight demons, and then she gets to join the army. And that whole chapter, that one chapter, was like an hour and a half of the audiobook, right? It just weird. And the whole thing was very well written in terms of everything that she had to do. But this will drop a butt ton of, I don't want to say world building, because the world's already built. It's expecting you to just sort of like follow along. It's like if somebody had just kind of plucked you off the street and dropped you in the middle of Paris, France, and say, have at it. Right? And if you're watching this and you're French, you're like, yeah, so what? Or if they just plucked you off the street and dropped you in the middle of Bangladesh. And you're just expected to figure your way out, you know. They get these magical portals called Lamassu. Don't really explain it until about maybe 20% into the book. But people are just using these magical portals, and it's like, oh, okay, he went through a Labubu. That's fine. And you're supposed to kind of figure it out through context, which in a way kind of makes sense, because if you are part of this world, you should already know what this stuff is. It doesn't have what's called the ignorant stranger trope, which is, as an example, as a counterexample, one of my favorite sci-fi shows is Farscape. And that was about a guy who's just plucked from everyday Earth, flung out into space, and he has to deal with all these aliens. And of course, he doesn't know any of these aliens any more than we do, because he's from Earth. He's from Earth of today, an Earth that doesn't know aliens exist. And it's just, you know, watching Jerry Springer shows and watching football on Sunday. That's his life. And now he's got to deal with ships that are alive and giant space monsters and everything like that. And so as he's learning, we, the audience, are learning. This book doesn't have an ignorant stranger. Everybody in this world has been in this world, has grown up in this world. The only person ignorant of this world is us, the reader. And the book does not really hold your hand in the beginning. You're expected to just sort of catch it based on context clues. This was very reminiscent to me of Dune, right? Dune was a big, huge, sprawling world. In fact, if you ever watched the David Lynch movie, they spend like 5 minutes just doing this big info dump in the beginning just to get the audience caught up to speed. Okay, we have all these worlds, we have an empire, we got this desert planet, spice, less space travel. Okay, now let's start the movie. You know, this was had very Dune vibes to me. So if you are looking for a sprawling space epic with space angels fighting demons on alien planets, this is your book, because he gives you that in spades. It's told in 3 parts. The first part is almost like a prequel. We're meeting some of these characters, and then we kind of put them aside. And in the second book, we're basically introduced to Space Jesus. And I say this because he's the Neo of the book, right? He's the chosen one. He is the fourth in his line, so he's Space Jesus the fourth. And the whole second part is just him going on this trial and learning about himself and growing into this role of that he doesn't want. He doesn't want to be Space Jesus. He just wants to be a kid. But his dad's like, no, you're going to be Space Jesus, so we're going to send you on like the last planet you should ever be on. This thing called Earth, which is like taboo, and we're never supposed to be on Earth. Um, and then in the third book, he's kind of come into his own. He's not quite Space Jesus yet, but he is not a child anymore, and so it kind of shows um, that story arc, and the whole book kind of ends with like, okay, now we're ready for the real book. This whole thing is basically a prequel, and I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? After all this, and we're it's like it. It reminds me of that South Park cartoon, and I'm only saying it because it's actually on the TV right now, where they're doing World of Warcraft, and they spend months defeating that one guy, and they're like, oh, what do we do now? I was like, what do you mean, what do we do? Now you can play the game. Um, that's how I felt at the end of this book, where it's like, oh, well, now we can start the story. So this is a devotion of time here. Like I said, the audiobook was 24 hours long. This is thick. And not only is it thick, it's dense. Like I said, there's a lot of history in this thing that he sort of cliff notes, because it's like, okay, so we had this battle, and then once upon a time there was this battle, and this battle. Okay, now let's get to the good part. And once you get to the good part, he spends his time. And there's a lot of, like I said, the one chapter where this one gal is doing her right, and she's just climbing this mountain, and that whole chapter was like an hour of the audiobook. And he's going into detail about how her hands are getting tired and blistering and everything like that. And then in the end, some good guys go and says, oh yeah, well, we're not supposed to help you with everything, so we'll check you back at base camp when you come on down. So she lays down, relaxes. Whole bunch of Fanes show up, which are basically the demons, and so she's got to fight them solo or sacrifice her right, and has to start this shit all over again. And she's also needs to warn the village because she's afraid they're going to wipe them out and everything like that. And apparently they can turn into lions, which is like something you kind of figure out along the way. I mean, it was just I mean, like I said, that was one chapter, and that alone was this huge epic tale. So it's very dense, and there were portions that felt a little like going through a textbook. Not quite that bad, but I mean, it was just like, there's this history you need to know for this part to make sense. We're going to kind of gloss over it real quick, spend about 10 or 12 pages explain. Now we're going to get back to the meat of the story. There's a few times like that. And again, I don't think it's the fault of the writer, because like I said, we have these battles that last chapters, and he goes into it with painful detail. This person died, this person is being tortured, this person, that kind of thing. When characters that you only met 3 chapters ago die, you're still feeling the pain. Keep in mind, these chapters are like an hour long, so by the time these characters die, that's the length of a normal book for some people. It is very dense. This is not a casual read. I think if you're willing to put the time in and invest in it, you will enjoy it. If you are definitely in the Dune fan, or you are in the George R.R. Martin vibe of big, huge, long, sprawling epics, I think you will enjoy it. But this is definitely for a specific type of audience. That type of audience, I think, will really, really dig this. So take that as you will. Give Them That Are Called by J.G. Parker a try. And until next week, keep on reading.